Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to our lab on separating mixtures. Today we are going to separate a mixture of salt and sand. The salt and sand in this case, they are almost exactly the same size and shape, so separating them out is going to be kind of a trick. What we're going to do is we are going to get a mix of salt and sand. We will then add some water. Adding the water will dissolve the salt, but not the sand. We will then filter out the salt water and leave the sand behind. We then have to get rid of the water. And if we do everything correctly, we should be able to figure out how much salt and how much sand was in this mixture. Just like the previous lab with the bubble gum, you're going to be expected to find a percentage for each. A percentage of salt and a percentage of sand. Together, they should add up to 100. Let's start off with the equipment that we need for this lab. Obviously, we need our mixture. So this is a mixture of salt and sand of a certain percentage, which I know you will be expected to find out. We'll have a hot plate. We have a ring stand with a ring. We have a pipe stem triangle right here, a funnel, a beaker. We have a scale, which you've seen before. A scoop for the salt and sand mixture. We have a piece of filter paper. In this case, it's a coffee filter. We have an index card for transporting the mixture. When we're ready to lift the beaker, we have a set of beaker tongs. Now, these are tongs specifically designed to hold onto beakers safely. We're going to be using a calculator, and most importantly, eye protection. Whenever we are dealing with heat or dangerous chemicals or sharp objects, eye protection is an absolute must. So let's get ready for this lab. We'll meet in just a moment. In order to do this lab properly, the first thing we need to do is take a few basic measurements. We have here a piece of filter paper. This is just a standard coffee filter you can get at a discount store. And at this point, you can read what the weight of the filter is. I'll leave it there for a few moments so you can get a good reading. Make sure you record this in your lab write-up. Next, we need the weight of an empty beaker. These weights are needed because once we get certain measurements, we're going to have to subtract off the weight of the filter paper or the weight of the beaker. Finally, we have an index card. Now, this index card is strictly designed just for holding our samples, so I don't really care what the weight of the index card is. So like in the previous lab, I'm going to zero this out. And now, to get a sample of our sand and salt mixture, make sure you get this recorded into your lab write-up. To begin our separation, we're going to take our filter paper. I'm going to fold it in half to get a half circle. Fold it in half again so you get something that looks a little bit like a wedge, and open up just one side. And it resembles something like an ice cream cone. We're going to place this into the funnel, and in just a moment we're going to begin separation of this mixture. So I have here a funnel. I'm going to place it on the ring stand and then a beaker underneath this. We're going to take our sand and salt mixture, pour that into the funnel, and now we're going to pour some water in. Water will dissolve the salt, it will not dissolve the sand. I want a pretty good amount of water, and I'm going to stir this up just a little bit. I don't want to damage the filter, but I do want to make sure that as much of the salt as possible is dissolved. We will let this drain for a few minutes. Once it's done, we'll come back and begin the next phase of our experiment. So it appears that all of the salt water has been filtered through. There is a very, very small amount of water that is soaked into the coffee filter. I don't want the weight of that, so what I'm going to do is take this out, place it off to the side, and let the water evaporate. It might take several days for this to happen, so I'll be coming back in several days to take this measurement. But now it's time to get the salt and the water separated. So let's take care of that in a moment. So here we have a hot plate. This hot plate, as its name suggests, gets quite hot. So I'm going to turn it on to the highest level. The water is going to get hot enough to boil. So when the water boils, it'll leave a steam, but the salt will be left behind. And if we can drive all of the water off, we can then find out how much salt is in there by subtracting off the weight of the beaker, which you got before, and getting the weight of the salt. At this point, we're just barely seeing the water coming to a boil. And in a few minutes, it's going to be at a full rolling boil. At this time, we now have a rolling boil, and in several minutes, the water should be completely boiled off, and we'll be left with just a beaker and whatever salt was left behind. So finally, after quite a while, we have all the water has been boiled off. So using our beaker tongs, remember safety is important, we are now going to weigh the beaker with the salt in it. Okay, let that stay for a few moments. You can record it. Please remember, this is not the final weight. This is the weight of the beaker and the salt, but the beaker is not necessarily something that we are interested in. And our final measurement, we have dried out the filter paper with the sand in it. So we are weighing this as well. And once again, please remember, this is not the weight of that we're looking for. This is the weight of the filter paper and the sand. We don't want the filter paper, so we are going to have to get rid of that in our measurements. Once you have all your measurements done, you can do your calculations. Please make sure that you have the calculations and the questions done and turned in by the due date. If you do have any questions, please feel free to send me an email and I will respond as quickly as possible. Good luck.